Inertia is defined as the tendency of an object to stay exactly as it is unless acted upon by an external force. But as an ideal, inertia defines how matter should behave in a force-free universe. It implies that in the absence of these external forces, the world would be nothing more than it naturally is. That means motion would be linear and continuous, and stillness would remain undisturbed. And for an anime whose heroes are constantly built up and torn down by external forces of belief, it couldn't have been a more perfect name for its opening song. And the opening wastes no time getting to that point, as it gets down to business in literally its first frame, which along with the next 2 seconds might be the most important part of the whole opening. It starts with what appears to be a growing sapling, but before it can mature, it is immediately overwhelmed by multiple white pillars that outgrow and bury it completely. This represents how the identities and self-expression of characters within this world are cruelly erased to make room for the voice of the masses. Best example being how young Chen is disregarded by almost everyone and even himself because a number on his wrist said so, or how Linling is transformed from a regular guy to one of the most popular heroes in the world simply because that was what the people wanted him to be, no matter how much he tried to protest otherwise. But the white pillars don't stop there. They merge into an almost liquid substance that finally morphs into 2 hands, which then craft the outline of the hero tower. That shape is then stamped onto a coin, which creates the popular currency we've seen throughout the series. This moment, in my opinion, reveals a whole lot. That this world and its heroes aren't grounded in personal strength or individuality, but in the support and expectations of the masses. The plant being buried earlier represents how individuality is often one of the first sacrifices made in order to survive in a world upheld by collective ideals. To further hammer on that point, the exact same image, i.e. the hands of the tower, show up again on the backs of the hero cards in the next scene, and even in the character music videos. And don't forget the back of those cards, we'll circle back to that a bit later. The coin now appears in the hand of an unknown character who I'm pretty convinced is X, but beyond the identity of the figure, the coin in his hand carries symbolic weight. See, coins have always been symbols of power and authority. Historically, rulers would stamp their own faces or symbols onto currency to declare that they were in charge. Examples being Julius Caesar and some Roman emperors who came after him. And here, it's the same idea at work. The coin bears the image of the hero tower along with the numbers 1 to 10, which represent the top-ranking heroes and the collective trust that props them up. In his other hand are 10 cards, each representing one of the top 10 heroes. The figure tosses them into the air, and mid-flight they transform into white doves that scatter in different directions. The one we follow lands fittingly on X, transforming him into his hero appearance along with the city around him. These doves show up again and again in both the opening and the ending, serving as a recurring visual representation for the top 10 heroes. But why doves? Well, considering the native culture of the creators of this show is Chinese, I think we should take a look at this from the lens of Chinese culture. And in Chinese culture, doves symbolize loyalty, peace, and longevity. In some traditions, their feathers are even used as protective charms against evil. It fits, right? These heroes are meant to embody humanity's finest qualities, to protect, to inspire, to stand as paragons, no pun intended, of virtue. The doves could also represent the public's trust, as it's something intangible that lifts these individuals into heroic status. And if it really is X who throws the cards, then he's not just a participant in the system, he's also the one launching their eyes, which adds a whole new layer to the conversation. Because if he's the one who sent them out, does that mean he also made himself a hero? Sounds wild, I know, but when it comes to X, that's kind of the name of the game. We then transition to the next scene where X, forever the guy she swears is just her gay best friend, is standing front and center in the vibrant cityscape, with the hero tower looming boldly behind him. He's facing away from the tower, which is an important detail I'll come around to, and around him massive billboards flash his image, telling us how important he is to this world. But the insane thing is, X is holding the same coin we saw at the beginning of the opening, which all but confirms it was his hand we saw, and given the long history of rulers stamping their image and currency, this moment all but crowns him as the top of the top, the pinnacle of this hero society, as his position of Hero X suggests. And yet, he happily lets go of the coin. That single gesture speaks volumes, that X clearly has zero interest in the fame, status, or power that comes with the title he holds, which tracks once you take a look at everything we know about him. This guy still works a 9 to 5, ditched his room in the hero tower, treats a single coin like it's his life savings, and hoards sugar packets at at the office like they're Pokemon. So yeah, him facing away from the tower and dropping the coin definitely checks out. Which naturally begs the question, why is X so uninterested in all the glory that comes with being the top hero? A question the next scene wastes no time answering. As the coin slips from his hand, it transitions us from the dazzling surface world into the darker submerged reality beneath it. In these dark depths, we see 10 chess pieces slowly sinking within it. As they fall, one of them, the king piece, turns into X. So let's recap. 10 cards, 10 doves, 10 chess pieces, and 10 heroes. If one of the game pieces is X, I think it's safe to assume the others represent the remaining 9. It's a brilliant bit of visual storytelling that's gone on here. First, the heroes are shown as cards with designs very reminiscent of tarot cards, hinting at the potential and mystery within each of them. Then they're elevated into something more spiritual, divine even, with the dove symbolizing purity, trust, and guardianship, which represents the idealized image the world projects onto them. But all of that is peeled away the moment we go beneath the surface. Here, the heroes aren't sacred symbols or mystical archetypes. They're chess pieces, game tokens, pawns, no pun intended, and the metaphor couldn't be clearer, which is to say that they're not truly in control. They're moved, managed, and positioned by greater forces, namely the corporations and the systems that oversee them. These two scenes draw a sharp contrast between perception and reality, a reality that only X is deeply aware of. And I absolutely love the fact that X is represented by the king piece. See, in chess, the king is both the most important and one of the most vulnerable pieces on the board. Capturing the enemy king means victory, but the king itself can barely move, limited to just one step in any direction. It's still a somewhat strong piece, but it's also really fragile. And honestly, the same could be said for being Hero X. As the center of everyone's belief and admiration, you automatically become the most exploited. You're the face of every campaign, the mascot for whatever trend the corpos want to push this season. Your every move is examined under a microscope, not just by fans, but by rival agencies dying to dig up dirt to bring you down. And sometimes it's your own agency looking to throw you under the bus to prop up someone else. Then there's the job security, or lack thereof. You could lose it all because someone off-screened you in a tournament, or you cheated on your girlfriend, or God forbid the greatest sin of them all, people got bored of you. And if you don't take that fall gracefully, well, that's practically a villain origin story. In fact, that's how it usually goes for former Hero X's. And when you do get your ass kicked, which you will, your options are pretty bleak, which are to spend the rest of your life in prison or end up in some hero agency's incubation pod, which is about as different as potato is from potato. All to say that the position of Hero X is both the ultimate prize and also a terrifying curse. And this scene captures that contradiction perfect. But X isn't done yet. He still has more to show us, as we're drawn into his eye and forced to share his perspective. And from his point of view, we glimpse a stage setup that interestingly resembles a giant roulette wheel from a distance, which means that to him, the entire hero system isn't some noble mission. It's a game. Not his game, but a high-stakes power play orchestrated by the corporations that control the heroes, a suspicion that, as it turns out, gets confirmed later in the opening. We zoom in on the roulette wheel, which then turns into a stage with X at its center. But in classic X fashion, he doesn't stay in the spotlight for long and quickly cuts the moment short by snapping us away from that scene. As he snaps, a massive kaleidoscopic mandala is formed behind him. The mandala spins with an almost hypnotic rhythm as it cycles between 12 and 6 eyes. Interesting numbers because in Chinese numerology, 12 symbolizes a perfect balance of yin and yang, embodying both yet transcending either, while 6 is the number of fortune and luck. It feels like a metaphor for X's godlike power and the perspective it grants him. Maybe he was simply lucky to receive such power, or that the power brings him fortune. Either way, this shows that X sees more, knows more, and exists on a completely different plane from the rest of the game pieces on the board, as some promotional art for the show have already implied. As the mandala fades, we transition to a new scene where the camera pans across a landscape of ruined buildings, slowly zooming out to reveal X standing in front of it all. But before we can take in too much, the scene is quickly covered by red curtains, as if X is deliberately hiding it from us. This moment feels like one of the first real hints about X's past. The destroyed buildings aren't from any known location in the story's present timeline. They're nothing like the cities we've seen in the current age. But here's the kicker, we've seen them before. Specifically in the original ESO trailer during his fight with Zero, the crumbling floating structures in that trailer match the ones behind X almost perfectly, and with the kind of attention to detail this show is known for, that connection can't be accidental. It subtly reinforces a possible link between X and Zero, which isn't the only time this happens in the opening, mind you. Could X have been a survivor of the fall of Dawn? Or was he influenced by it in an even deeper way that may have even affected his view on heroism? Because in one of the trailers where X is shown to be snapping through multiple scenes as though searching for a specific outcome, a striking line flashes across the screen. "Born in ashes, heroes I shall redefine." Is he seeking to create a world where the fall of Dawn cannot repeat itself, or could it be something else? This moment could also lend credence to the time travel theory, that X comes from an even darker future and is trying to prevent this world from spiraling into the same ruin. The architectural similarities to the Zero incident might be more than just a callback. They could also be a warning, a glimpse of what's coming if things go unchecked. Whether this scene shows us a glimpse of his past or his future, I think one thing is clear, that this destroyed world holds the key to understanding who X really is. And just as we're completely zoomed out of the cityscape, another symbol is quietly added to the equation, talking about the two Scarabs framing the top and bottom of the scene. Beetles, especially Scarabs, have long been seen as messengers of the earth. Their presence or absence is often seen as a sign of a healthy or a failing ecosystem. In certain spiritual traditions, they're viewed as guardians of primal energy and inner strength. And inner strength is exactly what I think sets X apart from every other hero in the story, which fittingly is exactly what the next scene begins to explore. We get a highly stylized sequence that introduces all 10 heroes, beginning with X. At first glance, it feels like your classic cool stuff happens moment you'd expect from any anime opening, but on closer inspection, it's anything but shallow spectacle. This scene subtly explores each hero's relationship with the trust value system, a theme first introduced in the very first frame of the opening, now visually represented again by the same formless white liquid-like substance, but this time it literally molds the heroes, each to a different degree. Queen, being the ever-confident powerhouse, is drawn in sharp, bold lines. Her form remains completely stable and is untouched by any instability, before the scene transitions to Dragon Boy, who's also shaped by the fluid, but retains a defined silhouette, implying a similarly strong sense of identity within the system. Other heroes like Ghostblade, Cyan, and the Johnnies get equally firm, stylized depictions, each suggesting their own levels of self-assurance or integration within said system. Loli, on the other hand, appears more fluid, her form a little less stable, suggesting a more malleable or uncertain identity. But the real turning point comes with Ahu and Isol. Ahu's form is almost entirely made of the fluid itself, which tracks considering he's a dog whose sentience was granted through the trust system. He literally exists because of it. Isol, on the other hand, is literally the fluid. There's no point where the fluid ends and Isol begins. The white substance is him. Yang Chen has become so completely consumed by the mantle of Isol that there's no longer any distinction between the two identities. It's probably why he never takes off his mask, which is a wonderful contrast to why the original Isol never took his off, but that's for another video. His complete lack of self-worth has surrendered his entire identity to what his trust value says, a genuinely tragic representation of what he's become. Then we get to Nice, but I don't think it's actually him. The figure we see radiates his own light, powerful enough to push away every obstruction on the screen. From that alone, we know that this is actually Linling, who broke free from the influence of the trust value system and forced a hero identity entirely his own. And then there's X. Or is there? Technically he appears in the sequence, but if you watch frame by frame, you'll notice something strange. X is already there before the white fluid appears. He's just there, untouched, unchanged, and completely separate from the process that molds the other heroes, and without a flicker of instability in his shape. That alone suggests his powers and perhaps his very existence as a hero have nothing to do with the trust system. He's an outlier, born of something else entirely. And it gets even more interesting. The transition into the scene starts with X snapping his fingers. That snap releases a spark that trails behind him, and if you look closely, it's animated just like the white fluid. A few frames later, that spark seems to trigger the eruption of the fluid that forms the other heroes, which raises a wild but recurring possibility in this opening, that X didn't just stand apart from the creation of these heroes, he may have caused it. Whether directly or indirectly, the opening keeps dropping hints that X had a hand in shaping the hero landscape as we know it, and this scene is one of the most compelling pieces of evidence yet. We then move to a scene that powerfully illustrates the psychological toll of the trust system on the hero's identities, depicted through the image of a beating heart wrapped tightly in chains. Look closely and you'll notice something really brilliant, that the links of the chain are made up of the very numbers used to display trust values. Since the heart traditionally symbolizes a person's true self and core identity, this image is a metaphor for how the trust system literally binds and distorts that inner self. It suggests that heroes aren't just being shaped by public opinion, they're literally enslaved by it, most times in direct opposition to who they really are. This same clip appears even in the Nice music video, where the heart and chain imagery is used to portray the OCD he develops as a side effect of his so-called perfect powers. The heart we see here then undergoes several transformations, each reflecting a different facet of this pressure. It first takes the appearance of a dark purple hue, which I interpret as a representation of the fear-based power that's often associated with mental degeneration and loss of self. It then changes into a digitized multicolored version very reminiscent of a like button, which I think represents social media and its role in reinforcing these chains that turn characters' identities into performances. And finally, the heart explodes, which I interpret as a violent release after being bound and distorted for so long. That explosion feels like a grim foreshadowing of what happens to many heroes trapped by this system. We've seen it before, with Nice, Boa, DJ Shindig, and Smile. It's a tragic but all too common trajectory, that when a hero is forced to bear the burden of everyone's belief, something always snaps, and we'll dig much deeper into that a bit later. The chorus hits and Nice is the first hero we see, and I'm sorry, but the Nice section really cracked me up. Cause bro is first of all shown jumping down from what appears to be the moon, which is nuts because his first appearance is him literally jumping off a building to his death, which is such an insane reference to put in here. The moon behind him is most definitely a nod to Moon, his fake girlfriend, and it almost looks like he jumped to get away from the moon, but upon landing, he fondly looks back up at it, almost longingly. This, in my opinion, marks the transition between Nice and Linling, and their relationship with Moon. If you take a closer look at Nice's hair after he stands up, how it's shaded almost looks like Linling's, which is pretty cool that the opening continuously differentiates between the two without spoiling anything. And then there's Iso. Throughout this part of the opening, every hero is framed by a distinct light source, almost as if their identities are defined by the light they create or reflect. Linling has the moon, Ahu has a spotlight, Lolly also has the moon, and Cyan literally generates her own light on stage. Even Ghostblade is lit by a blend of moonlight and the green glow from the room in front of him. Dragon Boy is illuminated by his flashing billboards, Queen has the open night sky, and the Johnny's eyes mirror the light from Ghostblade's scene. But Yang Chen as Iso is completely different. Instead of being illuminated, he becomes a force that erases light. As he sprints up the side of a building, the areas he passes don't light up, they go dark. He doesn't carry a light of his own, nor does he reflect anyone else's. Instead, he snuffs out the light as he moves. It's a powerful and really heartbreaking image. Yang Chen has become someone completely consumed by his hero mantle, so much so that he no longer shines. He's not just lightless, he's a void that quenches the light as a natural byproduct of his existence, as we've already seen him do in Linling's story. The one character I found most fascinating in this sequence is Ghostblade, or as I'll be calling him from here on out, Mosha, his Chinese name, because let's be honest, it just sounds way cooler. He's shown standing in a dark alleyway, in front of a door lit from within by a green glow. Flying above him is Lolly, which immediately says something about the kind of hero Mosha is. He's the guy who stays in the shadows and does the dirty work, while the more marketable heroes like Lolly fly overhead, basking in the glory. It's subtle but deeply telling. The green lit door is almost certainly a reference to the room in his character trailer, the same one where he was seemingly experimented on as a child. That memory and trauma is always looming just behind the door, and it feels like he hasn't walked through it, but he also hasn't escaped it either. And then there's the blood trail at his feet that stretches just out of frame. It's a quiet but chilling detail that captures the dark, violent reality of his heroism. But here's what really caught my attention: the transition to the next scene and what it might be implying. While Loli flying overhead ties into Mosha's narrative and vice versa, we also see the scene reflected in little Johnny's eyes, with a rather unsettled expression, before quickly devolving into their usual kawaii shenanigans. This is an interesting reaction, especially when you consider what we've been shown so far in the trailers and character promos. There seems to be some history between Mosha and the Johnnies. History being that it's very likely Mosha killed the original Johnny, who at one point wasn't only Hero X, but also Little Johnny's father. That would explain the brief tension, and Little Johnny immediately reverting back to a cute face might also hint at a side effect of his hero life, that he isn't allowed to be anything more than cute, to the point that his, in quotes, uglier emotions are buried beneath the lovable facade, and that his darker, edgier form is the only way he's able to express those emotions. Dragon Boy section also goes by pretty fast. You know what goes by even faster? The shadowy blur that zooms across the screen while he's still in frame. It's subtle, but it's not the first time we've seen something like this. In one of his character trailers, Dragon Boy literally leaves his reflection behind as he walks away. There's this recurring theme of duality surrounding him, or maybe even an entirely separate being coexisting within him. But we don't get time to think about that because apparently, the camera guy has someone even more important to show us. Enter Queen. And by enter, I mean she gets half a second on screen where it really looks like she's about to do something important that we never get to see because X sticks his hand in the frame and makes himself the center of attention. This is the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen in an anime opening. Obviously, it's a metaphor for how X stole Queen's moment during the Hero Tournament, but the fact that Bro won't even let her aura farm in the opening is just another level of disrespect. X then proceeds to aura farm, because why not, by changing the art style a few times, before we transition to an insane shot that features a massive statue of X, with half his face missing in what looks like a temple built in his honor, as multiple hands far below reach for him. First things first, I don't think this is a death flag. X does have a few of those, especially in the ending sequence, but we'll save that discussion for another video. This particular moment, in my opinion, feels less like foreshadowing and more like a visual statement about his nature. See, X is simultaneously this world's greatest star and its greatest mystery. The missing upper half of his face in the statue is a direct metaphor for his concealed identity. No one truly knows who he is, what he's thinking, what he wants, or even where he really comes from. He's a living enigma, a myth in a world that's obsessed with clarity and metrics. The hands reaching toward him could represent the other heroes wanting to be him, the people wanting to know him, and maybe even us as viewers, all trying to grasp at something we're never truly meant to understand. And then there's the pedestal. The inconceivable height from where he stands to those below him emphasizes not only how untouchable he is in terms of raw power, but also how inaccessible he is as a person. So TLDR, everyone got a cute little moment and X got a whole temple dedicated to his greatness. They are not the same. We then shift to a casino, where the heads of the top 4 hero agencies appear to be playing a game of roulette. The same game X framed the entire hero system as earlier in the opening. Only this time, instead of numbers, they're betting on heroes. You can see cards with the heroes' images scattered across the spinning wheel and the entire room, turning their lives and fates into little more than chips in some corporate gamble. While not as alarming as everything else, can someone please tell me why Rock seems unusually fixated on Queen's card? I mean, it gets me a little worried for a girl, especially given his track record. But there's also something really interesting happening with Dragon Boy, as he's the only hero with 2 separate cards in the game, making another breadcrumb supporting the doppelganger theory that's been hinted at in earlier scenes and his trailer. Whatever's going on with him, I think it should be quite interesting to see unfold. This whole casino serves as a powerful visual echo of what was suggested earlier, that the 10 heroes are just game pieces, only difference being that we finally see the players. Or do we? Because the framing of this scene is incredibly deliberate. From the perspective we see it all unfold, the agency heads look like giants, almost godlike, towering over the entire scene as they treat the heroes like disposable currency. But that's until you take a closer look. Their supposed superiority is immediately undercut by the presence of something even bigger, a massive eye looming right above them, watching. It's not alone either, there are many eyes, red and unblinking, just surrounding them. At first, you might think that these are just the backs of the hero cards, but a quick comparison reveals otherwise, because they're not the same cards at all. The design is different, it's darker, it's sharper, and even more sinister. Maybe they represent the end voice of this larger eye, some unknown being that sees through many eyes, watching the supposed gods as they play pretend. Or maybe it's a nod to a darker truth we've seen hinted at before, that the hero agencies manufacture their villains, scripting both sides of the narrative to keep the system running. In that case, the red cards could be stand-ins for those manufactured threats. But honestly, I'm not fully convinced that's the point of their placement here, because the next scene adds even more to the conversation. We cut to a hooded figure standing in what can only be described as a classic bad guy lair. Seriously, it gives Doofenshmirtz Evil Incorporated a run for its money. Then out of nowhere, a giant clawed hand appears above him with the hero tower floating in its palm. Now let's pause for a second, because there's something I've been dying to talk about. This, right here. The symbol hovering on either side of the tower, i.e. the Eye of Providence or the All-Seeing Eye. This thing is everywhere in the show. It's the logo of the Hero Commission, it's on the backs of the hero cards, and it pops up in scene after scene like it's photobombing the story. And I know, Lee Howling, that y'all are doing this intentionally, and it kind of plays back into what I mentioned earlier, this odd feeling that some greater evil is watching. The feeling that that very same evil might be responsible for this world's broken hero system. See, the Eye of Providence is originally a Christian symbol. It represents God's omniscience and divine providence, the idea that God sees all, guides all, and watches over everything with benevolence. But this scene twists that meaning completely. Here, the eye, and more specifically the triangular structure housing it, is shown upside down. That one visual cue flips the entire symbol on its head, both literally and thematically. Whatever this eye represents, it's not divine. It's not benevolent. It's something much darker, as if the clawed monstrous hand and the giant skeletal remains looming in the background weren't enough of a clue. But then something really clever happens. The hero tower suspended in that clawed hand suddenly transitions into another character's hand, Isol's, and not just any Isol, but the original, the first Hero X. This shift implies that the hooded figure and the dark force above him aren't trying to capture or ruin the tower. It feels more like they had a hand in creating it. They built the system and passed it down to OG Isol, the first hero of the new world that rose from the ashes of the Fall of Dawn, the first to take up the title of Hero X, and in doing so, he unknowingly inherited a rotten foundation, one that he would pass down to every Hero X after him. All of this while the hero tower is being physically constructed around them. It's not just an origin story, it feels like a warning that the system may have been broken before it even started functioning. And at the time of this video's release, we're about 13 episodes into season 1, and by now we can confirm something major. Every hero in this sequence is a former Hero X. Now let me ask you something. Is there a single Hero X we know of who's had a happy ending? Let's go down the list. The first Hero X, OG Isol, literally saved the world from zero single-handedly and laid the foundation for the post-Hero Commission era. And what did he get for it? He gets killed by his younger replacement while the world cheered. The original Johnny, no one really knows for sure, but we do know he's dead and was most likely killed by Mosha. This guy, well, he gets his teeth kicked in by little Johnny in one of the trailers. Nothing conclusive, but come on, I really don't think he's walking that off. Then there's Mrs. Blazing Fire and Mr. Matchstick, dropped from the top 10 after a cheating scandal and disappeared from public life entirely. Smile loses his title to Boa, spirals into madness, and ends up playing a role in what's now known as the Smile Incident, and afterwards, complete obscurity. Or maybe he died, we don't know yet. Boa follows the same path. After losing to X, she snaps, tries to kill Queen, gets defeated, and ends up locked away. And Marshmallow, DJ Shindig, also goes full villain mode after his popularity fades, because apparently the final form of Hero X is either irrelevance, madness, or villainy. Which brings us to X, who in between the snap of his finger has Zero appear in his place for a single frame before finishing the motion. In this long line of tragedy, a terrifying question hangs in the air. What does this mean for X? Is he doomed to follow the tradition of tragic endings and eventually become a threat similar to Zero? Or is this scene saying the opposite? Maybe this scene is showing us that X will be the one to end the cycle, that he'll snap Zero away, erase the corruption, and make sure no more heroes go down that path. While that is yet to be determined, the final scene of the opening doesn't leave me feeling particularly optimistic. In the final scene, we see X standing on a puddle, one that appears to be reflecting the hero tower. At first, it almost looks like he's standing on the top of the tower itself, but as the shot slowly zooms out, it becomes clear that he's only standing on its reflection, which says a lot. It implies that the power and prestige tied to the position of Hero X might be just that, a reflection, a facade, because in truth, the only ones who actually hold the power in this world are the hero agencies and the hero commission. And in the distance, we see flashing lights, the kinds you see from spotlights and red carpet events. But as usual, X walks away from it all, and this time he walks towards his reflection, a reflection that takes on his civilian appearance, once again reinforcing what we've always known, that X wants neither the glory nor the spotlight. He just wants a normal life. But as the camera pans out, we see something else. Red threads that crisscross the path before him. And in Chinese and many Eastern traditions, red threads are a symbol of fate, the invisible ties that bind us to our destiny. So what does all of this mean? Is this the same fate that seems to doom every Hero X before him? Or could it be a sign that he's meant to break the cycle, to become the one who redefines what heroism truly is? And considering what we hear being said in one of the trailers, i.e. we're all chess pieces being moved by fate, it begs a very interesting question. Is X the puppet master, a puppet, or just another puppet who can see the strings? But at the end of the day, that's really just a theory. A Hero X theory. Now, I do think the ending sequence holds the real answer to all this, but hey, that's a video for another day, which I will be dropping hopefully soon after I drop a Superman video, which I've been wanting to make for a very long time. So if you enjoy this breakdown, please drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe, y'all know the usual. And I'm really sorry for how I sound in this video. I haven't been feeling too well, but I really wanted to put this one out, so I really hope you enjoyed it. So I'll catch you in the next one, yeah? See ya!